Have you ever really thought about how we decide who gets what in the world? I mean, really, who gets that house on the beach? Who gets the last ticket to the big game? It seems kind of random, but it's not. There's a powerful, often misunderstood force at work, and we're going to break it down. I mean, think about it. You can have two houses, basically identical, same size, same number of rooms, but one costs millions of dollars and the other, well, a tiny fraction of that. How does that happen? It's a question that hits close to home for a lot of us, and the go-to answer is usually just one word.
Greed, right? But here's the thing. As we're going to explore in this explainer, just blaming greed is like blaming gravity for a plane crash. Sure, it's a factor, it's always there, but it doesn't really explain why this specific thing happened. The real answer is so much more fascinating, and it unlocks the hidden logic of our entire economy.
To get to that real answer, we have to start with the one problem that every single society in history has had to deal with, no matter what, and that problem is scarcity.
Now, this is so important to get. Scarcity isn't some policy mistake, it's not because someone messed up the budget, it's just a basic fact of life. There has never been enough time or resources or beachfront property to give everyone everything they want all the time. This is the fundamental problem we're always trying to solve.
So how do we solve it? Well, one way is what you might call a bottom-up approach, a decentralized system that uses one incredibly powerful tool: prices.
You see, a price isn't just some number that a seller pulls out of thin air. It's information. It's a signal that's constantly telling producers what we want and telling us, the consumers, what things really cost to get to us. And at the same time, it's an incentive, automatically guiding resources to where they're needed most. It coordinates the actions of millions of people who have never even met. So let's walk through an example to see how this actually works. Imagine there's a huge drought in Argentina, and their wheat crop fails. Now, a farmer in Ukraine doesn't need to read a report about Argentinian weather. All she needs to see is that the price she can get for her wheat has gone up. That higher price is the signal. It tells her the world needs more wheat, and it gives her an incentive to produce it. No central planner, no government directive, it just happens. This quote just nails it. And what makes it so incredible is who said it. This wasn't some free market evangelist. This came from two economists in the Soviet Union, people who saw with their own eyes what happens when you try to get rid of this complex system of prices. They knew its power because they had lived through its absence. So the takeaway here is that the price system creates this kind of amazing spontaneous order. It figures out how to allocate everything from apartments to aluminum, not because one person is in charge, but because it processes these tiny little bits of knowledge from millions of different people, knowledge that no single person or committee could ever possibly have.
And this really brings us to the heart of the matter, and it's captured perfectly in this quote from Harry Brown. Whatever the issue, let freedom offer us 100 choices instead of having government force one answer on everyone. This sentence just lays out the two competing ideas so clearly. On one side, you have the 100 choices of the market, and on the other, a totally different way of thinking.
And that's what we can call government's one answer. When a price seems too high or unfair, the simplest, most direct-seeming solution is to just make it illegal, to force it down. This is the world of price controls. And look, the intention behind this is almost always good. Of course it is. People are having a hard time affording rent or food or gas. The goal is to help, to make things more affordable. But the problem is, by forcing that one answer, you override all those signals that prices were sending, and that can lead to all sorts of consequences nobody wanted. And this is where we get into some really fascinating cautionary tales. We're talking real-world examples that show exactly what happens when the information that prices carry gets silenced by law.
So, let's start with a classic rent control. The goal couldn't be simpler or more admirable, right? Keep rents low so people can afford to live in big, expensive cities. I mean, what could possibly go wrong?
Well, as it turns out, a lot. The actual results are often the complete opposite of what was intended. See, when you force the price of rent down, two things happen immediately. First, way more people want those apartments. Second, builders have way less incentive to build new ones, and landlords have less money to keep their current buildings in good shape. So what do you get? You get chronic housing shortages and rundown buildings. We've seen it play out in cities all over the world.
Okay, so let's flip the script. Instead of forcing a price down with a ceiling, what happens when you force a price up with a floor? This is what agricultural price supports do. The idea is to help farmers by legally guaranteeing they'll get a high price for their crops, to give them a stable income.
But again, this one simple action sets off a whole chain reaction of unintended consequences. The artificially high price tells farmers to produce way more than people actually want to buy. This creates a giant surplus. And to stop the price from crashing, the government has to step in and buy up all the extra food and put it in storage. And the result, as you can see from this staggering example from India, is this tragic paradox. Food literally rotting in warehouses while the government spends more on storage than on actually developing rural areas.
1,000 kilowatt hours. Just let that number sink in for a second. What on earth could it represent? Well, it represents an incredible amount of waste.
That's how much electricity the Soviet Union, with its centrally controlled artificial prices, used to produce a single ton of copper. Now compare that to West Germany at the time, which used a market system with real prices. They used just 300. Because real prices were telling West German producers, hey, electricity is expensive, you'd better use it wisely, the Soviet system had no such signal. So they wasted resources on an epic scale.
So where does all this leave us? Well, it really boils down to a fundamental choice between two very different ways of organizing society. It's a choice between, well, choice and control.
On one hand, you have the market. It uses prices to coordinate millions of choices that people make for themselves, and it's constantly adapting. On the other hand, you have government control, which imposes one single decision from the top down. And in the process, by short-circuiting those price signals, it very often ends up creating the exact problems, the shortages, the surpluses, the waste that it was trying to fix in the first place.
And this really gets to the most crucial points of all. You cannot pass a law to make scarcity go away. It is a fundamental reality. Price controls don't get rid of it, they just disguise it. So instead of a high price that you can see, you get a shortage or a long line or a product that falls apart. The costs are still there, they're just paid in a different and often much worse way.
And so that leaves us with a final question to think about. The world is an incredibly complex place, with millions of us all trying to meet our own needs. So when we demand one single simple answer for a really complicated problem, what are we missing? What are the hidden costs and the unseen choices that we're accidentally ignoring?